All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition. This time we're in Mexico, actually. Last time we were not. This time we're in Mexico. Well, I'm not in Mexico, but the fight's in Mexico. Last week was a really fun card. Lot of good fights. A lot of the favorites came through, right? So if you guys were dog hunting, you obviously didn't do that well. I was on a couple dogs. Obviously, they didn't come out. Excuse me. Kopylov was one of them. Got that one wrong. But the main dog that came out was Ilia Topuria, right? This guy came out and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to knock him out within 1 or 2 rounds. He absolutely did that. What I did not like about that fight, and I'll be honest and transparent, I was on Volkanovski in that fight. What I didn't like about that fight is I've never seen him kind of fight like that, right? When you see Volkanovski fight, he takes such confidence in his jab and his range. And, you know, for being such a shorter guy, he's got these longer arms where he can kind of keep you at distance, keep you at range, and kind of make you figure it out. You know, right out of the gate, if you guys are in my Discord, he was firing kicks with nothing behind him. There was no setup involved. He was just kind of firing kicks away. And the biggest thing that I noticed is when he was firing off his jab, he would go in, but when he would come out, he would just kind of lean his head back. And it was just very odd to me because I've never seen him do that. It was almost like he was uncertain about the knockout that he had, a couple months prior, or he was really a little too respectful of Topuria's power. So when I was in the Discord and I saw that, I said, he was working his jab. The jab was obviously landing great, but if you give Topuria 25 minutes to find your chin when you're exiting like that, with your chin high and you leaning back, he's going to eventually time you and he's going to eventually catch you. And that's what happened. So those of you guys that picked Topuria, good for you. I seen a lot of people that were on Cejudo this weekend. I don't know how. Merab is a machine, you know what I mean? So that was a high point of the night. So we had a really good night overall, but no, we did not hit main event. We're still up units for the year, which is good. We also have some boxing events coming up. We have one coming on March 9th, which is Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou. I'll be covering that. So we're up on all spectrums of combat sports right now. We're up in boxing. We're up in UFC. And we obviously want to be upcoming this week and make that cushion a little bit bigger. So let's jump into it. Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval. This is a rematch. This is a really good fight, if you ask me. When you look at both of these guys, if you look at the first time they fought, you got to kind of throw it out the window, just for the mere fact that they're not the same fighter, right? You got a guy in, Moreno, who his story is great. I mean, if you really, really think about his story, this is a guy who came into the UFC. He had some success. He had a couple losses. He ended up leaving, and he kind of did it the perfect way. A lot of these guys, when they get cut, you kind of don't see them no more. When they get, or they just stick to the same blueprint that they have. There's no evolution involved. There's no self-reflection involved. There's none of that. He went back to the drawing board. He patched up all the holes, buttoned up some things that he was loose on. He goes to LFA to test it out. Has good success in LFA, then comes back to the UFC and becomes the champion. So this is a guy who really has some really good self-reflection, of really good constitution, and he's obviously very, very skilled and talented. On the other side, you got Brandon Royval, who is an extremely slippery grappler, good striking, powerful hands, another well-rounded kid. But when I look at this fight overall, you have to look at, where do these guys match each other? And, which is very similar. Both these guys got very similar styles. Brandon Moreno is very slick on his back. Royval's very slick on his back. Both of these guys got power. But the one thing I do got to give Moreno on this side is obviously you got to give him the championship experience. You got to give him the 5-round experience. You got to give him all those accolades. He's been in the brighter lights. He's been on the bigger stages. All the fights with Figueiredo and stuff like that where, we were all tuned in. The guy fought him 4 times. That's how appetizing that matchup was for everybody. So you got to give it. You also got to give him the durability, right? Like, this guy is super, super durable. This kid takes punishment. He's extremely resilient. He has been in numerous amounts of wars, and he continues to move forward. You're just not going to walk over Brandon Moreno. You're just not going to, catch Moreno with something, and all of a sudden the fight's over. Where someone like Brandon Royval, even though, he hasn't been finished all that much, and he is also pretty resilient, you can hurt him. I've seen him hurt numerous times. I've seen him rock numerous times. I've seen him make mistakes in the cage. So this is not really who's better than who for me in this spot. This is who's going to make the least mistakes. And when you look at the cards where they're stacked, you have Brendan Moreno, who obviously was supposed to fight Emil Bazi. It's in Mexico, so it's on his home soil. You got Brandon Royval coming in on short notice for this fight. It's just, for me, it's a tough sell to pick Royval. Can he beat him in this fight? 1,000%. He's got the talent. He's got the skill set. He's got the striking. He's got the slippery grappling. He finds ways to get out of bad situations, especially when he's on the ground. But when you take all that and what I just said, short notice, on Moreno's territory, the durability of Moreno, the 5-round experience of Moreno, the championship medal of Moreno, it's hard not to pick him in this spot. It really is hard not to pick him in this spot. And this is a guy who, honestly, he has a motor for days. He has proven 5 rounds to have a very good motor. There's some fights that he's been spotty where we've said, his cardio does not look all that good. But all in all, I mean, Moreno is a really, really tough, talented, true Mexican warrior fighter with a lot of skill behind him. So it takes nothing away from Brandon Royval. It's not an indictment on Brandon Royval or anything like that. I just think Moreno edges him in the more important spots where rounds are close. He's got that championship mentality to figure out how to steal it. So I'm going to go Brandon Moreno in this spot with a very, very highly anticipated main event. I do like this main event. Next fight, this one's pretty intriguing. I see a lot of people on two different sides of this. Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. This is a rematch as well. This is something that was very unfortunate for both guys. The first time they fought, it ended in the first round. Brian Ortega ended up separating his shoulder. I have a lot of concerns with Ortega in this fight, and this is why. When you watch that first round of that first fight before it ended, both of these guys were having success. You had, Yair Rodriguez, who ultimately we knew would have success on the outside. This dude is a freak athlete. He's young. He trains in 12,000 feet above altitude in some temple in Mexico somewhere. So when this guy goes to camp, this guy dials in. And you just knew, but his athletic ability, his ability to make reads, his lateral movement, Ortega's a good striker, but he's a traditional style striker. He's not going to get dynamic. He's not going to use certain footwork. He's kind of going to use that normal lateral movement, little normal head movement, and he's kind of just going to go north and south. He's going to come forward, and he's also very hittable. But what Brian Ortega did very well in that fight was he was able to lock him down in certain spots. So when Brian Ortega wanted to lock him down and take that range away, he was able to put him up against the cage. He was able to lock him down. He did have some issues trying to take Rodriguez down, but when he did take him down, and this is a credit to Yair's athletic ability, he was able to kind of swivel his hips and unlock his hips and start threatening with an armbar. When he locked that up against Brian Ortega did the right thing. He tried to get his arm out. I mean, it was the position that he was in. There was other avenues if they were, in the center of the cage. But the position that he was in against the cage, he didn't have that many avenues to get out. So he had to kind of try to muscle his way out of that. And he did. Success to him, he did. But in the process, he separated his shoulder. The fight ended. So now my problem with that injury there is that anytime you get injured, a lot of people say, well, he's sidelined. When you're sidelined, that means you're sidelined. It doesn't mean you're just sidelined from fighting. You're sidelined from training. You're sidelined from so many different avenues of getting better and evolving your game. And in this time, you're only getting older. And this is a guy who has had issues with that shoulder 3 separate times. He's had 3 surgeries on that shoulder. So that is something you got to be concerned with, but not so much the injuries. All the time off during these injuries where Yair has been active. He's been healthy. He's been training. He had 2 fights since then. So when you put all that together, you're saying to yourself, well, the mountain to climb here is on the Ortega side. This is a guy who has been inactive when Yair is the far better athlete, has the higher upside, has the better ceiling. To me, he's a much better, fighter. I think Yair is special. I really do. I did not like Rodriguez when he was coming in. I didn't like certain things that he did. His attitude at some points in time, but he's tend to grow into himself and become a lot more humble. And this kid has a very, very high ceiling. Where Ortega is what he is, right? It's T-City. This guy's got a nasty submission game. His striking is good. He is also a dog. But like I said, the time off, you can't have time off against a guy like as dynamic as Yair. Yair's going to surprise you with things. He's not going to just wrap up a gift and give it to you and show you his cards. He's going to throw cards from you at all different angles. He's going to do spinning back fists, flying knees. He's going to continue to circle the cage, bring you to the warning track, and kind of lull you into him. And that's where Ortega's going to have to really get timing down and make adjustments and try to lie. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in this fight. So I do like Yair in this spot. I think it's a good fight, name value wise. But I think people are leaning on the name value a little bit too much on the Ortega side than really coming to the reality of the time off, the injuries, the more active fighter in Mexico. So it's really hard to make a good, solid argument for me for Ortega. Can he come in here and surprise everybody, snatch up a sub, jump guillotine, do something crazy, and get to? Absolutely. That's why they're fighting the fight. But if you're really looking at the economics of it, you kind of have to side with Yair here. So I do like Yair in this spot. Next one is an interesting fight, Zellhuber and Prado. When you look at this fight, you're looking at a kid in Zellhuber where he's got some good upside. He's got some good potential. He's a long and rangy striker. The way you get in on a guy like Zellhuber, though, is he does tend to step on the gas halfway. This is a kid who kind of coasts, and it's the one thing I don't like about him. There's certain spot where he doesn't coast, but a lot of times you can kind of lull him into this situation where you can bait him into the fight that you want. Francisco Prado, on the other hand, he's a complete opposite. This is a guy who charges the pocket. He just looks to come forward. He's very north and south. He's got good power. He looks to lay hands on you. Now, when you're fighting a guy like Zellhuber, who obviously is in the bonus side for the technical ability, the striking, the range management, all these things, you need a task. You need a game plan to kind of bring him down to your level, because Prado doesn't have the athletic ability, the prowess, the striking, range and stuff as Zellhuber does. Zellhuber is much more technically sound and clean. So you kind of use a technique called give and take. And what give and take is basically is you have to lull them to sleep. You got to kind of sell them a false sense of security. And I just don't know if Prado has that in his DNA and his makeup. He's more of a, let me come forward, let me lay hands on you. I'm going to take a couple to give a couple. And that's a part of the give and take, because the give and take is a lot of patience, and you got to kind of momentum change and make them feel that they're controlling the momentum change when they're really not. But I don't know if he's intelligent enough to really wire that into the fight, because once you're in the fight, you go back to what you know best, and what he knows best is coming north and south, coming just hitting hard, keeping his head just kind of on the center line. Even when he does move his head, it's very easily timed. He telegraphs when that head's going back on the center line. It's just a very tick-tock movement. So Zellhuber, being the more technical striker, he should be able to time that and really just knock the head when it comes back to the center. And there is that path for Zellhuber. I see guys that fight him. I've seen the way he fights, where I'm like, if somebody just uses the give and take approach, they can have their way with this kid. But in MMA, it's different, because these guys, why they have good striking and they have good boxing, there's a very different level in boxers doing it and MMA guys doing it. They work more on their technical ability, their lateral movement, their head movement, checking kicks and stuff like that, where boxers have these intricate footwork details, the triangle, L movements and stuff like that, where they can add a little bit more spice into the mix, where give and take is kind of a very easy, simple game plan in boxing, where you're not thinking about that in MMA. You're thinking about, what if he level changes? I got to check this kick. And you're just thinking about going balls to the wall. And like I said, I don't think Francisco Prado has that tied into his DNA. So ultimately, I do think Zellhuber is going to get what he wants in this fight. I'm sure Prado is going to put him in such situations that you might be on the edge of your seat if you have Zellhuber tied into a parlay or anything like that. But ultimately, I think Zellhuber should win this fight. Problem is the line. I do not agree with this line. This fight should be closer, because I don't have that kind of faith in Zellhuber that he's going to be able to hold serve like that for 15 minutes. He's still young. You still can bait him into a firefight without even trying. But for the most part, you can also steal rounds from him, because this is a guy, like I said, who doesn't put his foot all the way on the gas all the time. He kind of stays on the outside. He pokes and prods at you. And if you get a guy like Prado who's coming in and he's constantly charging the pocket, and he hits him with one or two very significant strikes, that ultimately can steal the round. You're looking at the damage end of things. Well, yeah, Zellhuber controlled the outside. Zellhuber was stabbing him a little bit. But then all of a sudden at the end of the round, you get Prado that pins him up against a cage and hits him with a 3-piece combo that caused the majority of the damage in that round, so he could steal that round. So there is ways to beat Zellhuber. There is ways to also lull him without trying to lull him into a fight. But for the most part, his game plan is pretty much stay on the outside, throw those teep kicks, keep you at range, jab at you, stab at you, and kind of utilize the real estate of the cage. So I do like him in this spot. I do think he wins, but like I said, that line is very, very inflated. Next one. This is an interesting fight. You got Raul Rosas Jr. and Ricky Turcios. So Rosas, this is a kid who, let's face it, I mean, we talk about the UFC bringing guys too early. Think about the track record they have. Guys like Sage Northcutt and stuff, they bring them in too early. And I'm not one that is a buyer into that. I believe that a fighter doesn't grow into their body. You grow into your body at different times. I know, like, for me, I matured in college. Like, I didn't grow into, I know guys that I was in high school, they had full beards, in high school, and they had like man bodies in high school. Like, I didn't grow into my physique until I was like a freshman or sophomore in college. And I like really grew into my physique. I put on fucking 30 pounds. Like, I look like a man child then. But there also comes a point in time where you're still, no matter what, you're still too young. And Rosas is not grown into his body yet. He's still at that very, very young age. And his skill set also is extremely raw. So I knew coming in when they brought him in, yeah, the kid's fun to watch. He's a great story. He's homeschooled in high school and all that stuff. He's got the speech impediment and he's the kid that was probably picked on, and then he comes out and now he's, fighting in the UFC. And he comes in and he wins 2 straight. And everybody, all of a sudden, the way the MMA community is, the casuals, oh, God, he's the next great thing. He's young. He's going to be this. And then he faces a kid in Christian Rodriguez who just had a little bit of well-rounded ability. Not a great fighter, not this dynamic striker, not this crazy grappler, just a tough kid that is grown into his body and is just is a little bit more well-rounded. And look what happened. He actually destroyed Rosas in that fight. So what does the UFC have to do now? The UFC has to bring him back because they buried so much stock into this kid with marketing and this is who he is and blah, 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 that they bring him back against a kid, Mitchell, that basically I don't even consider a test. Right, I don't even consider this guy a test. This was literally a layup for him to get his young confidence back, to get him back on the board, to put him back on the winning side, and say, here you go, beat this kid, and you'll be good. Your confidence will be back. The crowd will be back behind you. The fans will be back behind you because the fans are so easily bought and sold. Which that's not an indictment on anybody, but it's true. The UFC and MMA fans and boxing, and just fans in general today, they are so easily bought and sold because there's so much casual advice going out, and that's exactly what happened. Now you have him, he comes in, he beats Mitchell, and everyone's like, oh my God, first round, this and that, he's back. There was a blip in the radar. So now here he is at like a minus 260 against Ricky Turcios, who to me is the type of style that can actually beat Rosas. He's an aggressive fighter. He's got much better stand-up than Rosas. Rosas' stand-up is terrible. He's got very good grappling. He's got some decent entries, but you keep him on the feet and you can pick him apart. And I think if Turcios just does that and concentrates on that and stays on his feet with his pace, with his motor, Rosas has already shown that he gasses out at his young age, that Turcios can take over this fight late. I'm expecting Rosas to have his moments, without a doubt. He's going to have his moments in the first round, but I really do believe that Turcios is a very, very live dog here. And here's why I say that, because when you look at the win against Mitchell, when he came back, what did he show us? Like, he didn't show us anything. He didn't show us that his cardio got better. It ended in the first round. He didn't show us that his striking or all this other crap got better because it ended in the first round. He didn't show us anything. He showed us that he fought, for the educated, that he fought a guy that he's supposed to beat, And he beat him as quick as he should have beaten him. That's all he showed us. He didn't get into another fight where he showed us 1 or 2 or 3 rounds where I was like, wow, his striking did get better. Or now his cardio looks like it should look like. Or now he's making better decisions. Or his chin looks better. He didn't show us any of that. So he technically didn't show us anything with Mitchell. The UFC just put him back on the map with a win to make the fans get behind him again. So I'm not too sure about this fight. Like, can Rosas come in and really show us that, yeah, he made these stellar improvements? But you also got to remember, there's a mental component tied here. This is a young kid. This isn't an adult. Just because you see him on TV does not mean that this kid is an adult. He's a kid. He has a mentality of a kid. You have no idea if his confidence is there. You don't know, have no idea if he's laying in bed at night wondering like, well, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Just because he, in his hearts of hearts, he knew he was supposed to beat this kid Mitchell. He's not dumb. I mean, he's a kid, but he's not dumb. That was a layup, and he knows it. There was pressure on him going into that fight because, sure, a fight is a fight is a fight. What happens if he slips on a banana peel? What happens if he loses again? But the UFC wanted to get his back off the wall and put confidence back into him. So they said, listen, this is a kid you absolutely 1,000% can beat. Just go in there and beat him, and everyone's going to forget about what happened with Rodriguez. Well, I'm not going to forget about what happened with Rodriguez until he shows me otherwise. If he gets by Ricky Turcios, we can have this conversation again. We could sit down. We could have the conversation again. We could reassess him as the fighter that maybe he is then. But right now, he's still the fighter to me that lost to Christian Rodriguez. And that fighter does not beat Ricky Turcios. So I like the dog in this spot. And you know, he's a pretty significant dog. You know, over 2-to-1 odds, a pretty significant dog. I think he's being disrespected here. So I do like Ricky Turcios in this spot. Jags and Sam Hughes. You know, Sam Hughes is interesting, right? When you really look at Sam Hughes, I mean, she's been an underdog 3 of her last 4 fights in the UFC, and she's beaten. She's even won one of the fights where she was a 3-to-1 underdog. You know, the thing with Sam Hughes is, she's never going to be a contender. Like, she's not going to be one of those girls that's going to be top 5. She's going to be fighting for a title, but she doesn't have really the athletic ability. She's very, you know, she's got speed challenges and stuff like that. But the thing with her is every fight that she fights that she's supposed to lose, or just in fights in general, she just gets more intelligent in the cage. And if you have a high IQ in the cage, that can make up for speed, athletic prowess, and stuff like that. That helps. Not to mention, she's also a dog. She's someone that just doesn't lay down and die. You know, and Jags, on the other hand, this is a girl who, by all rhymes and reasons, on film, on dimensions, on age, on everything, she should absolutely win this fight. But where she has a lapse is she has major defensive deficiencies. And she showed that in the Gomes fight. I mean, this is a girl who, when things are rolling her way, she fights very well. But they have to roll her way. When things aren't rolling her way and she has to figure out different avenues and find detours and stuff like that, she kind of loses her way a little bit. And it showed in the Gomes fight where she got caught and she lost. You know, but when you look at the overall landscape of this fight, you're looking at a girl who's a lot younger, who's got a lot of maturing to do. She's only 24 years old. She's just going to continue to get better. And Sam Hughes kind of is what she is, right? We know she's tough. We know that she's a tough out for a lot of the newer girls, but she's 31 years old. Like, how many improvements is she really going to make? You know, she's going to have her trickle effect where she'll make an improvement here or make an improvement there, where, you know, Yasmin can make these major jumps in improvements at 24 years old and learn from her mistakes. So I'm only expecting her to get better. So I do expect her to win this fight, but I do think that the odds here are a little insane. I think every fight Sam Hughes just continuously gets disrespected, and I'm not sure why. But she's proven time and time again that no matter what kind of a dog she is, she's either going to come out and she's going to show you that you were in a fight, or she's going to win it. So I'd be very careful here. I am going to pick Yasmin in this spot, but you can't keep sleeping on Sam Hughes, man. Like, she has proven time and time again that she's there and she's there to fight. All right, the last fight on the main card is one that I think is probably going to be one of the better fights on the card. I love this fight, Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. Those of you who've been following me for a long time knows how high I am on Manuel Torres. Anybody who's a clean striker, understands range management, really has their combination science down. You know, I really, really like guys like that, especially that he's a Mexican fighter. You know how I feel about all the Mexican pride fighters. So he's a really, really good fighter. But when you look at the prowess of these guys as far as how do they match up, Chris Duncan's the type of guy that can give him issues, and I say that because when he fought Mota, don't get me wrong, that the knockout was unbelievable. And the way he stepped around on the outside leg and landed at that elbow, that was like just picture perfect. That was set up. That wasn't a lucky elbow like Yair threw to the Korean Zombie. Like, that was an actually perfect setup for an elbow. But when you look at the aggression style of how if you push someone like Manuel Torres, you can hit him because he's very hittable. He was hit a little bit too much for my liking in that Nick Mota fight. He tends to throw caution to the wind, tends to throw defense to the wind, and utilizes offense because he knows majority of the time he's in there with some of these younger guys, and because he is young, but they're not throwing him to the dogs like the guys that have prowesses like Max Holloway. He's fighting a certain level right now, and he's building his way up. He knows majority of the time he's going to have that range management on you. In a spot like this, Duncan, is a thicker guy. He's a bigger guy. He has an aggressive style to the point where he's very resilient. So I've seen Chris Duncan knock down, but Chris Duncan finds ways to get back up and be that dog. He's got that cardio and that conditioning that it's never going to get better during the fight, but he kind of hits like a steady state. So if he can figure out a way to kind of take that range away from Torres, make him fight a dog fight inside, there could pose issues for Torres in this fight. But overall, to me, it's the athletic ability of Duncan. It's just not a level. It's not a very good athletic, way. He doesn't move laterally. He's very plodding. He's very forward. He is accurate when he finds his target, but he doesn't create the target. You have to give him the target. And even though Manuel Torres is very hittable, he does move enough where Duncan might have problems finding the target. But another fight, I don't think that the line is full. Well, this one is a little bit closer. At least it's under 2-1. I do like Torres in this spot. I am a believer in Torres. I think this is a very good test for him. I think this is a fight where he's going to need to work on his defensive prowess a little bit. Can't let Chris Duncan come into the pocket and just clock him like Nicholas Mota was. Nicholas Mota was getting off on him a little too easily. Where if Duncan gets off on him like that, he could be in a lot of trouble. So I want to see the progression of him in this fight. This is a fight where I'm going to be really watching the progression because this is a kid in Chris Duncan who's very tough. He's I wouldn't say super durable. I would say he's more resilient because he can be dropped. But he's going to bring a certain element to this fight that Manuel Torres is going to have to deal with. It's not going to be Manuel Torres giving Duncan something to deal with. Duncan's going to bring something to him that he's going to have to deal with. And I'm very interested in seeing how he handles that and how he matures from that. So I am going to go Manuel Torres, and I actually do think Manuel Torres is probably going to finish him in this fight. I think Duncan's going to bring him some kind of a firefight, and I think Torres is going to probably get his timing down and catch him with something. So I'm going to go Manuel Torres inside the distance here. So that's the main card, guys, for the Mexico card. This is a really good card. A lot of lighter weight guys. There's going to be a lot of action. These cards, when they do them in Mexico and stuff like that, when they have these smaller guys, a lot more pep in their step, these real ballsy Mexican fighters, these are fun cards. So, yeah, this is going to be a great card, guys. Like I said, Mexican fighters, loaded with them, obviously, because it's in Mexico. Lighter weight guys, a lot of violence on this card. It's going to be a fun card. Don't worry about the name value. Just watch it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Those of you also, I want to say, that signed up last week, we had a major influx of signups. I really do appreciate that. A lot of new faces, which was really, really cool to see. So let's keep it rolling. Also, if you guys haven't checked out fightclb.com, it's fightclb.com. Go check that out. We have 1 month left, 28 days left. We have a couple spots left, and that is going to be one of the coolest experiences if you guys are a hardcore fight fan. So go over to fightclb.com, put in your email address. There's a video on there explaining the whole weekend. We have dinner with Randy Couture. We got tickets to Rose Namajunas and Amanda Hebos, which is going to be a great card as well. A lot of cool stuff we got going on, so definitely go check it out over there. Put your email address in. We're not going to call you. We're not going to email you. It's just basically you're putting it in on the newsletter, and when things come up about that event, we will send it to you. So I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great week. Have a good card. Good luck, and we'll see you next week.